Hi, my name's Nick, and this is my review of Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Most people agree, or at least used to, that this is the best Star Wars, and there are only three. This was unquestionably the best of them. And it is a very good movie. It expands and improves upon the original, and it fleshes out all the characters and their relationships, and it gives us a lot of things that are considered endemic to Star Wars that didn't really exist in the first movie. So let's go by, chronologically and see what we've got. First, I just want to point out some of the best stop motion that the 80s ever produced on the Tauntaun creatures. They look so good. A lot of people criticize stop motion for not looking very realistic. I like to show them the Tauntauns in this movie, and it can be more effective than CG because it's a real thing, and if it's well integrated into the environment, as long as the motion is smooth enough, and it's really amazingly smooth motion on these creatures. We get Han and Leia. And they're a little back and forth. They're snippy at first, but throughout the movie you'll see a love story done right. What Lucas was going for with Padme and Anakin, but this is what he was trying to emulate. And it's just the on-screen chemistry of Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford is pretty impossible to replicate. Han goes out into the snow looking for Luke, who has been kidnapped and captured by a Wampa, and we see Han's arc of his character that, where he used to be a mercenary and a scoundrel, now he's willing to sacrifice himself. They warn him, if you go out there, you're going to die, and he says, then I'll see you in hell. And we see that Han is not willing to listen to rules and authority when his friends are at stake. And this is the trait we'll see with a lot of the heroes. But he is now willing to sacrifice himself for his friend Luke. Then we cut to the Wampa Cave where Luke is hanging upside down, and here I'd like to point out some things the special editions added in, which are some shots of the Wampa, a guy in a big suit, and they really held out. This movie did much better special edition work than the other two, I think. We get better shots of the Wampa, both eating something before Luke cuts himself down and after he gets his arm cut off. Then Luke is collapsing out of the snow. He sees Ben's Force Ghost. The first time we see a Force Ghost, he'd only talked to him in his head before. Tells him you gotta go to Dagobah and find Yoda, which will be Luke's arc for the film. Han finds Luke with the Tauntaun, and he cuts his stomach open and puts him inside. And I just want to point out, I had the Tauntaun toy from the Kenner toys in the 80s, and there was actually a little rubber stomach with a slit down the middle that you could put another figure into the stomach of the toy, and it was really cool. I'll probably talk about my original Star Wars toys again throughout the course of this review. But then we get Luke in the bacta tank. He's healing up, and Han is again trying to tell Luke that, Leia has feelings for him, and Luke is not buying it. Leia is also not buying it, and this is when Leia kisses Luke, and it's not a romantic kiss. It's only done to shove it in Han's face that she doesn't have feelings for him. And it gives Luke a nice moment to feel good about. But they definitely had written them to be brother and sister at this point, but the characters don't know that, so it's not as awkward as you might think. Vader is told that there's, a response from a probe droid on Hoth, and his lieutenants still don't fully respect him. They acknowledge that he's their leader now. This is his ship, the Superstar Destroyer Executor. But they're like, sir, there's so many readings all across the galaxy. If we checked out all of them, and he's like, no, that's them, they're there. And so even across the galaxy, Vader's clairvoyance apparently now can help him find the Rebel base. So the Empire, and then he force chokes a guy through a view screen, which who knows where he is on the ship. This is just showing the extent and the range of Vader's force powers. We get the ion cannons. The rebels are firing at the Star Destroyers to shut them down so that the transports can escape. The first time I think we've seen ion cannons, which will be all over the Star Wars games from here on out. And they don't damage a ship, but they do shut it down. And we get the Walker assault scene, which is the first big action set piece of the movie, where the Walkers, the AT-ATs, are stomping through the snow, and the speeders are wrapping the cables around their legs. If you played this in probably many video games, I think the best interpretation was in Shadows of the Empire. But it's a fantastic scene, and it was really, not much special edition work was done in the ships and model sequence, because they were all so well done the first time around. I'll point out when the special edition did add things in, but here they only cleaned up the matte lines and transparency of the cockpits. You know, because they'd run a camera through the area, then they'd overlay the cockpit over that, and you could kind of see through it at first in the original versions. Han comes back into the rebel base to get Leia out of there as she's coordinating the escape because, you know, despite their bickering back and forth, he really does care for her more than anything else, and she does care for him, as we'll see later. But she's sort of playing hard to get. She feels like she shouldn't be with a rough-and-tumble sort of scoundrel character. But eventually she can't deny her feelings. Luke gets shot down, and we get to see how Luke on foot is able to take out a walker all on his own. He fires his grappling hook up to the underside of the walker, goes up there, slashes it with his lightsaber, throws in a thermal detonator or grenade, or a satchel detonator device, and takes out a walker all on his own. You get to see how effective one Jedi, even before he gets any training, can be on the battlefield. And also shows Luke's intrepidness, bravery, you know, the things that make Luke such a great hero. Then once everyone's out in space, we get the Millennium Falcon flying away, shooting down some more TIE fighters. Much better space movement, space combat in this movie, which there isn't a lot of, but it's done so much better. ILM had really learned a lot more, invented new technologies to shoot these things. Ships move so much faster and more fluidly through space than in the first Star Wars, which presented them, they looked good, but this, you can really see a lot more movement out of the Millennium Falcon. It leads the TIE fighters into an asteroid field where they get smashed apart by the rocks, and Han takes refuge in a giant asteroid. And then we get a glimpse under Vader's helmet when he's sitting in his big meditation chamber. Up to this point, if we didn't have the prequels, like seeing them the first time, we had no idea what was under that. We didn't know if he was fully a robot, if he still had a human body, or what parts of him, and we see just mottled white skin with like little red cracks running through it, and like, oh god, what's under there? And we'll of course see his face in Return of the Jedi, showing the tragedy of Darth Vader. That was originally Lucas's title for the Star Wars, The Tragedy of Darth Vader, the subtitle for the thing as a whole. So Luke finally makes it to Dagobah. His ship makes kind of a rough landing. R2 goes through the swamp, which shows that droids are not going to be impeded by being underwater, which normally an Earth robot you would think it'd be ruined if it gets in water. But this is Star Wars, so you know it's no big deal for R2 to go through a swamp. And Yoda shows up, and we get to see crazy old man Yoda. Now, if you've seen the prequels, of course you know that this is Yoda putting on some kind of act, or maybe you might think his years in exile have really driven him insane. But seeing this for the first time as an audience without the prequels, you have no idea that this even is Yoda. You literally don't know that. You think it's just some crazy little Muppet alien like the rest of Star Wars, and he's going to lead us to Yoda. So when we, what the hell did I write there? Oh yeah, before that happens, we just get crazy old man Yoda. Then Leia and Han are trying to fix the Falcon in that cave in the meteor, and they finally get their first real kiss, where, you know, Han is just slowly leaning into her and gives her, you know, she's playing hard to get, but he's not overly aggressive. She has plenty of time to put up a real resistance if she doesn't want it to happen. But of course, she kind of gives into it. She's like, I like nice men. He's like, I'm a nice man. You know, you need more scoundrels, and there aren't any scoundrels in your life, and that is why she's attracted to him. She's grown up with senators and diplomats and people on Alderaan and rebels, and nobody like Han Solo has ever really strolled into her life and swept her off her feet like this. And the natural charisma of Han Solo can't be overstated. And of course, C-3PO interrupts him, which is just classic C-3PO. He's a very funny character. Now we see the Emperor, the first time we've ever seen the Emperor in these movies, except for the prequels, and it's a special edition. Originally there was a different Emperor on the hologram screen, and he looked kind of screwed up, like big hollow eye sockets, and they hadn't really cast Ian McDiarmid, I don't think, yet. Like, he wasn't until Return of the Jedi when we see the Emperor in the flesh. And he's discussing with Vader that the Skywalker child is in fact the son of Anakin Skywalker. And now the audience doesn't know that Vader is Anakin, so they have to play it off like Vader doesn't know either. But I'm going to assume that Skywalker is a common enough name in the universe that he assumed that Luke Skywalker was like a different Skywalker. So, you know, it doesn't have to be that Vader's a complete moron. But really, you would have to read it that way. But once Vader finds out, oh, this is my son, the Emperor wants him killed, and he says to the Emperor, well, if he could be turned, he would be a powerful ally. And he's like, yeah, okay, you're right. Do you think you can do it? And the Vader tells him he will join us or die. So this is the conflict within the character of Darth Vader. He does want to serve the Emperor, does want to serve the Empire, but he also doesn't want to kill his son. He, has a familial connection here, and he hasn't had that since, Padme. He assumed that the children were never born when Padme died. So, well, for him to find this out now, I think there probably is an element of denial there too. Like, he thinks it's not possible that this Luke Skywalker could be the son of Anakin. So then we get Yoda in his little cabin with Luke, and Luke is very impatient, wants to get out of there and meet Yoda, and Yoda's still doing good crazy old man shtick until finally he has a turn, where Luke has just tried his patience so much, and he's like, he just turns on a dime into the solemn old Yoda that we know from the prequels, and he starts talking to Ben in Force Ghost form, though the non-visual Force Ghost variety, and he's like, this isn't gonna work, he's too old, he's too impatient, and turns out Yoda has been sensing Luke across the galaxy his whole life, and he knows that he's always had his mind on the future and on his, the skies, and never on what he was doing. He's never present in the moment. And Luke is very adamant that he should begin the training, that he can do this. He's like, Ben, tell him I can do this. So even though this is their only hope, that it's still not a foregone conclusion. Yoda tells him, I've trained Jedi for 800 years. I'll keep my own counsel on who's ready. But he does eventually give Luke a shot. And Luke says, I can do it. I'm not afraid. And Yoda tells him, you will be. This movie made everyone love Yoda. This is where the love for Yoda originally came from. Why he's all over the prequels. Yoda tells him, adventure, excitement, a Jedi craves not these things. A Jedi, and that's exactly what Luke has been craving, is adventure and excitement. So Luke is going to have to do an internal journey as well as the external journey of teaching his mind and body to use the Force. He really has to change his character as well, which won't happen in this film, but will happen in the next film. Yoda explains the nature of the Force to Luke, the light side and the dark side, the seduction of the dark side, the quick and easy path to power, that if you ever start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny, like it did with Vader. And Luke enters into the cave. The cave scene confused a lot of people. I know it confused me when I first saw it as a child, but it's pretty easy to break down. Vader and Luke goes into the cave, he finds Vader, they fight a bit, he cuts off Vader's head, and then the faceplate explodes and shows Luke's face in the disembodied head of Vader, decapitated head of Vader. And the message is, if you destroy Vader, you will become him. But as a child, you don't really understand filmic language in that sense, so I was just very confused by it. So, then we get this is intercut with more scenes of Leia and Han and the Millennium Falcon, but I didn't find any of those important enough to comment on. I'm trying to keep the time on this video down. So we'll go right into Luke's X-Wing sinking into the swamp, and he tries to lift it. He's showing a lot of adeptness to the Force, standing upside down and lifting rocks. But when it comes to lifting the X-Wing, he believes it's impossible. He doesn't believe himself capable. But Yoda shows him it's do or do not. There is no try. And he just lifts it out with a little hand. He says, judge me by my size, do you, and where you should not. And size matters not. The Force exists between everything. It exists between the ship and the land. And so Yoda, using the Force, lifts the ship out of the swamp, floats it overhead, which this was a nightmare to film, by the way. Yoda took like 4 puppeteers on set to operate him, at least 4. And it's really interesting stuff in the special features. You can find the documentary Empire of Dreams on YouTube if you want to know more. But this is not a special features review. So basically the Force is centered around believing in yourself. Luke tells him, I don't believe it, and Yoda says that's why you fail. And it's true. If Luke believed he could do it, he could do it. But if he doesn't believe in himself, then he can't. And I think that's a big part of why Rey has so much power, because she has this indelible belief in herself. But we'll cover that when I get to episode 7. Yoda also tells him, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter, and this is more Eastern philosophy expressing itself through the Jedi teachings, but it also exists in a literal sense, as their Force ghost is able to persist beyond death, literally a luminous being. So then we get to Lando and Bespin, after the Minox attack in the cave and the Millennium Falcon flies out and it was in the stomach of a giant space worm all along. Just more Star Wars showing you that you can't expect anything. You need to expect the unexpected. Even a cave in a rock in space is not what you think it is. But Lando is a complex character. He is efficacious on the surface, very effusive and praising Leia and being good friends with Han, but then it turns out that he's actually sold them out to the Empire, but then it turns out he's going to betray the Empire later. He's another moral gray area until he gets hooked up with the rebellion and he's just a straight good guy from the next movie on. But at this point, he's still very much a morally gray character, just trying to do the best he can. And that's why I really hope we get a Lando Solo movie. I liked Lando a lot in the Solo prequel. And on Bespin, we get some of the best special edition additions. It makes the movies look more in line with the prequels. There's a lot of exterior shots of Bespin that look like the exteriors from episodes 1 and 2. And we get a lot of windows inside Bespin hallways that are replaced. They used to be just flat white, and now they've been replaced with views of the outside and ships and elevators going by. So this is how you do special edition additions the right way. And it really only improves the movie, in my opinion. So Luke is having visions on Dagobah that his friends are in trouble, and if he can go save them. But Yoda says if you do, you'll destroy everything they work for. But Luke, like Han before, has to go try and save his friends, whatever the risk might be. You know, it's his decision to make. They don't try to dissuade him from it, even though Yoda and Ben warn him, if you go and face Vader now, I can't help you. You'll be doing it alone. And this is more of Luke's bravery, and you might say overconfidence at work, but that's probably judging him too harshly. He just wants to help his friends. Who can fault him for that? In Bespin, Chewie has found C-3PO. He's gone missing. And I want to point out Lucas's adeptness at, or actually Urban Kirshner in this one, but Star Wars in general's adeptness at non-verbal storytelling. None of the characters in this scene where Chewie finds C-3PO speak English. It's just Chewie making sounds and the Ugnaughts making sounds and a lot of physical movement, but you are never confused as to what's going on. And so Chewie gathers up C-3PO's parts, and we see that Lando comes in to invite everyone, Han and Leia, to a lunch where it's actually Vader's trap. Vader's inside, and Han starts blasting him. Vader blocks the blast with his hands, which we've never seen him do, but it's awesome that he could just block blasters with his freaking hand. You know, and then he force pulls Han's gun and invites him in to have a seat. And Lando apologizes, saying, you know, he arrived just before you did. I had no choice. But Han is always cool in any situation. He never loses his cool. He doesn't get angry. You know, he just kind of goes along with it. So Vader starts torturing Han and Chewie, really not even asking them any questions. The torture is just to make them feel bad, so knowing that Luke will feel their feelings and will be drawn into the trap. Which he is, of course. And Chewie, while left alone, repairs C-3PO, who will be on a non-stop bitch fest the rest of the movie. And bitchy C-3PO is the funniest C-3PO by far. And when I had the Kenner toys, the C-3PO toy actually comes apart into the different parts. His arms and legs come off. And I think the Chewie toy came with a little backpack, so you can actually put the C-3PO parts into the Chewie backpack. And it was awesome. Like, you know, they were little 4-inch figures with not much motion or anything, but they did what they could, and we loved them. So then we get the carbon freezing scene, very famous, where Han is going to be carbon frozen so Boba can take him, and to test the carbon freezing process that Vader plans to use on Luke. And we have Han and Leia finally expressing their true feelings. Leia realizes this might be the last time I see him. She kisses him and tells him, I love you. And he says, I know. And this was actually an ad-lib. The written line was, I love you too. But it just wasn't working. And they reshot it until finally Harrison ad-libbed, I know. And it worked perfectly. And that's what made it into the movie. I just wanted to point that out. Now, Luke versus Vader. Luke comes and he and R2 are tracking Leia through the halls. Leia yells to him it's a trap, but he goes forward anyway. You know, he already knew it was a trap. And he gets separated from R2. He goes into the carbon freezing area. And Luke versus Vader is my favorite fight in the original trilogy. Return of the Jedi is a bigger and more complex fight, you know, visually speaking, but I love this one because it really showcases Luke's bravery. He is so much the underdog here. Vader is a master of the Force, master with the lightsaber, this huge, imposing, evil figure who he thinks killed his father, who he just saw kill Obi-Wan in the last movie, and yet he's standing there mastering his fear, controlling his emotions, and giving as good as he gets. He actually manages to score a hit on Vader at one point when they're up on the balcony. But Vader is trying to tempt him. You know, Vader is to some extent toying with him, but to some extent Luke is making a real fight out of it, you know? But he's trying to tempt him. He says, release, you know, I feel you mastering your fear. Now release your anger. Only that can destroy me. You know, he's trying to tempt him to the dark side because he knows full well what the path to the dark side is. We get to see the intercut with this is the escape. Lando, you know, signals to his people to take out the Imperial troops that are watching them, and they try to escape, and they first try to rescue Han, but Boba Fett gets away with him. And Leia is such a badass in this scene. She shoots so many stormtroopers, you know. They seem a little inaccurate with their blasters. Leia hardly ever misses. R2 hooks up with them, and he saves the day by opening up a door they really need to get through to escape to the Falcon. So R2 gets to be a hero, and C-3PO is bitching his head off in Chewbacca's backpack, and it's hilarious. Then we finally get to the end of the lightsaber fight where Vader cuts off Luke's hand, and he reveals to him, you know, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. And he's trying to get him to join him, you know. He says, the Emperor knows that you're strong enough to overthrow him, to defeat him. Join me. He tells him he's his father. Luke says, no, that's impossible. But Vader says, search your feelings, you know it's true. And then he gives him the same offer he made to Padme, what that movie was echoing. Join me, we can overthrow the Emperor and rule the galaxy as father and son. And Luke, exercising his bravery yet again, chooses instead of that to fall off the platform into, he doesn't know he's going to be sucked into a ventilation shaft and not just die. I always thought that he thought he was jumping to his death at this point, and it was just luck that saved him. So I love the bravery Luke shows in this entire end sequence, and that's why it's my favorite fight. Leia and the crew have made it to the Millennium Falcon. She senses Luke's back there, showing that she is Force adept, because we don't, you know, Han can't sense Luke calling to the Force. No, neither could Lando or Chewie. Leia is showing her Force sensitivity even here. Vader, you know, they go back and rescue Luke. Vader also telepathically communicates with Luke on the way out, telling him one more time, join me, it's your destiny. And Luke is just upset with Ben. Ben, why didn't you tell me Vader was my father? And we'll get that explained in the next movie. And it's a question as to what Luke's destiny is, you know? Is there a version of reality where he does join Vader and they overthrow? You know, I'd like to see that. There's a series of Star Wars comics called Infinities that are a what-if series. I don't think that ever happened, but I'd like to have seen it. R2 saves the day again because they're still not out of danger. The Millennium Falcon hyperdrive has been deactivated the whole movie, and R2 turns it back on, and now they get to escape. So they're with the Rebel fleet at the end, and Lando's talking about his mission to go rescue Han, which will be the intro to Return of the Jedi. And Luke's new hand, robot hand, it shows the medical droid poking his fingers and him reacting, showing that his new hand looks like a regular human hand. It has feeling like one, just showing us, you know, right away there's no need to wonder what the repercussions of having his hand cut off will be. And without the prequels, of course, this is the first time we know about prosthetic limbs in the Star Wars universe. And I just want to say, my reaction to this movie as a kid, I had never seen a movie where the bad guys won at the end. I literally didn't know it could happen. So I was more shocked at that than about Vader being Luke's father. I expected them to save Han. I expected him to win. I'd never seen this happen. And I was so excited for Return of the Jedi, which actually came out into theaters during my lifetime. So I got to see that in the theater as a baby. And I can't wait to get to Return of the Jedi. I'm probably going to start it right now. But I hope you've enjoyed these. Hope you're still with me. And I thank you for your time.